Ladies and gentlemen, from the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace and Justice, Deacon Gerald Celente.
Hello, this is Deacon Celente of the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace and Justice. Freedom, peace, justice. We don't hear those words anymore. There is no freedom. People up in Canada that protested against being forced to get vaccinated had a freedom convoy. And what did they do? They stopped it from happening and put the people in jail for starting it. Passed resolutions, Emergencies Act, to lock them down. There's no freedom. We talk about what goes on in other countries, how they're being robbed of their freedom. Freedom's being lost all over the world, and the COVID war showed us how they take our freedoms from us like that. They tell us what to do, who could stay open, who can't stay open. Oh, one of the new studies that just came out about how alcoholism is skyrocketed since the COVID war began. I wonder why. People's lives destroyed, being locked up, businesses out of business. In New York City, Grand Central Station's not so grand anymore. And the Penn Station, the old Penn Station that was beautiful, that the maniacs destroyed, that garbage Penn Station, both of them. Traffic is down 50% from where it was before the Cold War, the COVID war. COVID war, Cold War. Now the Cold War, by the way, is heating up into a hot war, and we'll get into that. But going back into alcoholism, skyrocketing. Because the same sick people that have robbed us of our freedom, peace, and justice, you mom and pop businesses, small businesses, you all have to lock down. But liquor stores could stay open. Liquor stores could stay open. And you know why they had them stay open? Because of the high tax revenues that the politicians get from alcohol sales. Because politicians don't work. They're politics. Many ticks that suck the blood out of us. So they want all the money that they can get. And now we've gone from the COVID war to the Ukraine war. And ladies and gentlemen, World War III has begun. It started. It started with Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. That's been greatly escalated by the United States and its NATO members. Rather than negotiating for peace, and again, this is a conflict between Ukraine and Russia that's been in and out of each other as countries for some 1,300 years. So for outsiders to be involved in this and making it worse has escalated it into World War III. It has begun. This is the headline of Sunday's New York Times. Biden says Putin cannot remain in power. Biden says Putin? How about we, the people of the United States or any other country, have no decision in what should be going on in another country? I'm totally opposed to what Vladimir Putin has done. I'm against war. We're about freedom, peace, and justice. But for the United States and NATO to ramp up these wars by sending more military armaments into keeping it going, rather than negotiating for peace, is a crime against humanity and the highest spirits as I see it, as the deacon of the Universal Church of Freedom, Peace, and Justice. President Joe Biden demanded that Russian President Vladimir Putin be removed from power in a speech in Warsaw, Poland. Warsaw, Poland. For God's sakes, this man cannot remain in power. That Joe Biden is using God's name in vain. Who are you to ask for God's sake to take a man out of power when you, Joe Biden, who calls Vladimir Putin a butcher, have a butchering track record that actually surpasses his? Go back and listen to what you said when the United States and NATO illegally destroyed a country that used to exist by the name of Yugoslavia, and how you kept calling for more bombs and more killings. Look at your support for all the wars since you've been in office for some 50 years. You are a pot calling the kettle black. Putin cannot remain in power. Biden said to the troops, God bless you all. For what? Well, I'll tell you for what. Because at the end of his speech, Biden says, if Vladimir Putin, who is to blame, don't even think about moving into 1 inch of NATO territory, we have a sacred obligation to defend each and every nation of every inch of NATO territory under Article 5. A sacred obligation? This isn't sacred. It is not our obligation to increase wars. And you, Joe Biden, who talks so tough and demean anyone who questions you, you did everything you could and were very successful at getting draft deferments for the Vietnam War. You were a coward. You call the men brave that go fight. But you didn't go fight. You were a coward. And then you got a 1Y. Yeah. Anything you can and did not to fight in the Vietnam War, while you have escalated this war by sending more munitions and armaments to keep the war and the killing going, as well as all these other NATO countries that have done the same. Rather than negotiating for peace, you are building up war. Putin has the audacity, like all our autocrats before him, to believe that might will make right. Are you talking about the autocrats, such as George W. Bush and all of the people behind him that lied America into the Iraq War, that killed over 800,000 people, that the New York Times and all the American and Western media never showed the pictures of all the people being slaughtered and all the cities being destroyed? And then when people like Julian Assange and others showed the mass murder of Americans, of innocent Iraqi people, they were sent to jail. Chelsea Manning, Snowden hiding in Russia because he put out the information about how we the people have lost our freedom and being spied upon. And you have the audacity and the arrogance to say that Putin has the audacity, like all our autocrats before him, to believe that might will make right when you have called for the might of bombing of innocent people your entire political career? You didn't stand up when you were vice president and Barack Obama said Gaddafi has to go and destroyed Libya, the richest country in Africa? Was it for the oil? Or Iraq? How you supported those wars? From Bush Sr. to Bush Jr.? For the oil? For Syria? That has killed over 600,000 people? That the United States still has troops in the area where they're getting the oil? Biden celebrated that many American businesses have left Russia completely, from oil companies to McDonald's, he quoted. That's a quote. As a result of these unprecedented sanctions, the ruble almost is immediately reduced to rubble, he said. So the people are suffering. The people of Russia. And as Biden has admitted, the sanctions don't work. And the sanctions that are being imposed are hurting all of us, with inflation skyrocketing. Biden said Russia should be kicked out of the group of 20 nations. Russia has the world's 11th largest economy before the invasion, and now because of the sanctions, they're saying it's going to fall to the top 20. All they're doing is calling for more war, more hatred, and the implications are going to be deadly. World War III has started. The shots have been fired, and they're being heard around the world. But no one is listening. Instead, they are cheering on for more and more war. If Russia invades or has a conflict with Poland, it is the sacred duty to keep escalating this. In a time of nuclear weapons, hypersonic weapons, drone warfare. It'll be the war when they asked Albert Einstein what weapons will be used to fight the Third World War. He said he didn't know. This is the man that was quite instrumental in inventing the atomic bomb. He said, but they'll be using sticks and stones to fight the fourth. Our lives have been destroyed. They sucked the joy and beauty out of them with the COVID war. And the hypocrisy of the people in charge, like the guy that's playing mayor of New York. Athletes and celebrities do not have to be vaccinated. But the workers must be vaccinated, and he fired over 1,600 because celebrities and baseball players and basketball players are far above the rest of the people. Biden says Putin cannot remain in power. Did Putin say that Bush cannot remain in power for the wars that he started based on lies? And Joe Biden, whose disastrous, murderous exit of Afghanistan. Not that we should have been there in the first place, totally against it, but how he exited and left those vulnerable who supported the United States and left hundreds of millions of dollars of military equipment behind, and whose ratings was sinking into the toilet before the Ukraine war, now bravely speaking of more war. Did Russia say Barack Obama should not remain in power for starting the Libyan war? That Barack Obama should not remain in power for the troop surge in Afghanistan? Did the headline read, Putin says Obama should not remain in power for his Syrian war? What hypocrisy. What hypocrisy. We have no business being involved in this. No one is speaking of peace. Where are the politicians and where are the people marching for peace? My generation only marched for peace for the Vietnam War because they were getting drafted. Once the draft ended, let the wars begin, and they haven't stopped. World War III has begun. Biden, Putin, Clinton, Obama, Bush, butchers, all butchers. So when Biden calls Putin a butcher, yes, Putin, you've joined the Butchers Club. This is Deacon Salenti. We are in very serious times. Do all you can to donate to freedom, peace, and justice. Do everything you can to support freedom, peace, and justice. If you take a side on the war, in fighting the war, you will be taking a side on the losing side. There will be no winners. Thank you, and we'll see you next week.